And we'll start recording. Okay, so we're live. So hello everyone, and welcome to the Blab, the PropTech Blab, looking at sort of all the little bits of innovation and fun that you can have out there with the property technology sector. And we're here joined with my friend and colleague here, Michael H. Reed. I love that, Michael H. Reed. It's
H.
Oh, it sounds pretty good there, Michael. And a real pleasure to invite sort of Ragnar on here. And Ragnar, I'm not even going to start with your surname, mate. It's
Lithrasir.
Lithrasir. I get it wrong. But we're going to talk about blockchain and Bitcoin and its effects on the world of PropTech, because it's I've recently written quite a comprehensive article on the subject, and for me, I found it particularly difficult looking at the terminology used. And for those of us in the real estate sector, I don't think the enormity of this technology will ever be truly understood until you get someone like Ragnar coming on, who's literally a global expert on this stuff, trying to put it into sort of normal language that we can start looking ahead of ourselves over the next sort of 2 to 5 years and actually see how this could have an impact. So, Ragnar, let me just start with you and just say, how's it sort of, what is it first off? What is blockchain? What is Bitcoin? Maybe we can put it into sort of normal language.
So blockchain is a couple of things. It's a ledger, it's an escrow system, and a currency. And when people say blockchain, 90% of the time they're talking about Bitcoin. So let's just assume we're saying Bitcoin. If we're not, then we'll say Ethereum or something else.
Okay, so I suppose the simplistic side of things, is it fair to say that blockchain, as what I understand, I keep on seeing this word protocol. Blockchain is the protocol on which Bitcoin operates. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. I've also heard that there's another tweet, another sort of comment out there, and I think it's quite an interesting way of putting it, which is the internet, which obviously we all know. Everybody understands what the internet is. The internet is the internet of information, is what I've heard a very good quote. So the internet is the internet of information, whereas the blockchain is the internet of value. And I think that sort of normalizes it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. So the blockchain is a protocol. It's a way to exchange information. So for the internet, you're exchanging information, but the blockchain is exchanging value, digital value. Okay. And so there's almost two sides of this, isn't it? I would argue, which is there is the side of Bitcoin and how that can affect real estate, and then there is the whole side of the blockchain and how that can affect real estate. So can you explain, your role with the Bitcoin side of things? How is that put? You're the chair of the International Federation of Bitcoin for Real Estate, is that right? Yeah, so I'm the president of the International Bitcoin Real Estate Association, and we have over 270 members around the world. You're one of them. And it's a great organization, people from every sector of real estate, brokers, investors, real estate developers, financiers, people in escrow, title. And our purpose is just to bring everyone together and try to implement this technology into the industry, make it better.
The blockchain technology.
All of it. So blockchain as a ledger, Bitcoin as the currency, and Bitcoin as an escrow system, and then Ethereum for smart contracts. And there's some smart contracts you could kind of do with Bitcoin as well. So I think that's the first thing I want to say, is that Bitcoin and blockchain is more than a ledger. It's also a currency and escrow system and a contract.
Okay, so let's break that down. Let's break it down. So we say Bitcoin is a currency. Now, I've been wanting to do it for an eon, but I just haven't got around to it. I wanted to understand more about how Bitcoin works as a currency. And so last night, in preparation for this, I sorted out my first Bitcoin wallet. I was very pleased with myself.
I've been lying around somewhere. I'm just not sure where.
So I got my Bitcoin wallet, and I got my first step to becoming a Bitcoin billionaire by owning 0.0699 Bitcoin.
and I now feel as if I've suddenly accelerated into the 21st century of currency stuff. But I mean, Michael, have you got Bitcoin? Are you in this? Are you here?
No, a couple of years ago, I tried to do the mining and the wallets, and it just gets so confusing that I eventually went, I can't, enough. So I've got my wallet somewhere. I can't remember. Then do you know what? It's quite confusing. I think we've got to get past that confusing stage first.
Well, I mean, arguably that's what Ragnar, you're doing with this whole sort of trying to bring the real estate sector into the digital age of this and the cryptocurrency age. But so, can you explain the Bitcoin as a currency and how important that could be, and why? Like what I tried to do last night, why I stuck with it. Why should people stick with the sort of the confusing nature of it all?
I think Bitcoin as a currency is the most compelling for people in countries like China, Argentina, anywhere where there's capital controls or restrictions. People in the United States, Canada, the UK, it's less compelling. So I think the most important aspect of Bitcoin as a currency is that it's a separation of money and state. In the United States, we have the concept of the separation of church and state. Well, Bitcoin is the separation of money and state. So you see what's going on in China right now as their economy starts to tank, the government is cracking down on people's ability to move their own money. So if there's one thing you want to remember about Bitcoin is that it's not issued by any country. Therefore, you have greater privacy and security and freedom to use it.
So could you use the blockchain without the Bitcoin in real estate? So putting the ledgers in, so just using the blockchain rather than having to have the blockchain and Bitcoin for real estate, just putting in one at a time. Because you'd imagine, to get rid of the way things are done at the moment and replace it with the blockchain, and that's a massive undertaking over many years. It's not.
Well, that's a great question. You can't have the blockchain without Bitcoin, the currency. Bitcoin, the currency, is what gives the blockchain its security.
Yeah.
So the fact that Bitcoins have value, which is at about, I think it's $400 right now for one Bitcoin. That's how much value there is in securing it. So you see now bankers and other people wanting to divorce the currency, the token, from the blockchain. If you do that, it falls apart. Now, you can interact with the blockchain, still using Bitcoin, the currency. There's lots of different ways, but at least hopefully that answers that first question. So no, you can't interact with the blockchain without using Bitcoin in some way, even if it's under the hood and you don't know what's happening. Because Bitcoin, the currency, it's very strange because yes, it's a currency just like a dollar or a pound, but it's also a file. It's a data packet. So when you're recording something on the blockchain, you're actually moving a currency unit. And that currency unit contains data in it. It's sort of like...
And it's those blocks that have the value.
What's that?
It's the block that has the value. So one block would be one Bitcoin?
No. So the Bitcoin currency is basically a file in a way. Think of it this way. You go to a restaurant and you put out a $20 bill. That's a piece of currency. That's easy to understand. But then imagine writing on that piece of paper, this is for my steak dinner. So now you have a currency and data on that currency. And that's how Bitcoin works. You can actually, the currency contains data as you transfer it.
I tell you the difficult thing on this is, and this is my big concern for it all, is the fact that what we're talking about here. I mean, Michael, you probably have a little bit more knowledge than I do. Ragnar, most definitely. And even that, scratching the surface brings a level of complexity to it, which I know for a fact traditional real estate agents around the world will get concerned and worried that they don't understand it, and they'll get frightened by it. And I think one of the most important aspects of sort of what we're doing here and some of the articles that I've written is almost to normalize the whole thing and to say, look, what's the importance of it? Understand it, try and read a little bit around it to just get an appreciation of how this could have an effect. So, for example, one of the core reasons why my understanding of why the Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies, because obviously there are a few, but Bitcoin is the most well-known, is that 25% of the global world, the global population, only 25% can actually buy things online. 75% can't, because there is no currency that can substantiate an online payment system. So the Bitcoin suddenly normalizes or democratizes. What's the word?
Democratizes.
Is that a word? Anyway,
I think so.
The democratization, there we go, of global currencies, because obviously it gives people, certainly in the Southern Americas, in Africas, in the far reaches of China, it gives them a fair level playing field in terms of being able to play with currency, which they wouldn't ordinarily be able to buy product with. So there's that side of things. And so I'm very interested to see what happens in the next 5 years in terms of people buying physical products using Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency. I particularly think there's an interesting side or an interesting angle of people buying properties or quite feasibly shares of properties. We do a lot of stuff in the crowdfunding sector where you're not buying entire properties, but you're buying units, sort of, a 50th or whatever, where suddenly I think cryptocurrency stuff, because there's low fees and there's no costs involved, I think there's a particularly interesting angle there of buying property using cryptocurrency. But the other angle, which I want to sort of mention about, purely due to the sort of the lack of timing that we have on here, is this point of the blockchain, which is arguably, and Ragnar, Michael, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, is the underlying protocol of how Bitcoin works, which is this filing system, this public ledger of all transactions. And from a conveyancing side of things, this is where my particular interest comes in. Because what I see there being a challenge is the efficiencies of real estate transactions, which is for every single transaction that we make, Mrs. Smith wants to buy Mr. Jones's house. As soon as she says, I want to buy your house, then all of a sudden, she then has to employ a solicitor to go away and do random searches based on various different sort of surveys, and she has to do a title, deed, insurance, checks, and all this sort of stuff. And it's every single time it happens, it has to be a brand new search. It has to be a brand new investigation. It's very admin heavy, which perhaps surveyors don't necessarily want to do, but they're having to do it and they're having to charge it for it. And if I'm correct, Michael, Ragnar, hopefully you can tell me on this, the blockchain could conceivably make it a far quicker and a far more efficient process for people to do that title deed and surveying research. Is that right?
That's what I was asking Ragnar earlier, is it tied together? Is it explicit? Do you have to have the blockchain and the currency together? Because the blockchain, you know, that would be amazing. But the Bitcoin side, I think that's the tough call.
Yeah, to answer your question, Michael, yes, you do have to have Bitcoin, the currency, for the Bitcoin blockchain to work. That's the short version. Yeah.
The blockchain, James, can't use it. I mean, maybe the protocol or the methods and the theory of the blockchain could be implemented, but not the actual blockchain that Bitcoin runs on, I suppose.
Well, people are trying to build blockchains without a currency unit. There's some pros and cons to that, but generally what they give up is the security and the permissionless aspect of Bitcoin, which makes it so compelling. So, James, to go back to your original point about title and how difficult it is for people to always look it up a different property. So every country has its own way of recording who owns property. And in the United States, there's 50 states. And in those states, each state has maybe 100 counties. And each county determines how property is recorded. So not only do you have to deal with 50 states, you have to deal with 50 counties in 50 states, much less now spread that around the world. It's a disaster. So Bitcoin in the blockchain is, for the first time in history, a protocol that allows one place for all properties around the world to be recorded almost for free, without having to get a software license, without having to get permission to record it or look it up. And not only that, we have, for the first time in history, one currency where you can buy a property from anywhere in the world.
And I think that's very important. The geographical delimiting factors of currency exchange is obviously going to be an important thing. Bringing in a question from Spy Gadget Rentals, Monty Henry's just brought in. How many real estate contracts have actually been conveyed using the blockchain since the inception of the International Bitcoin Real Estate Association? Any data on that at all, Ragnar? I mean, I don't imagine there's an awful lot of them. Very few, in fact. But what's the thoughts on that?
So for that question, how many contracts have been conveyed? Well, that depends on how you define conveyed. Because when there's two ways to convey it. One is if you're just paying for the property in Bitcoin, the currency. The other way is if you pay for the property using traditional currency, and then you record the deed on the blockchain ledger, or using something like a colored coin, which is a portion of a Bitcoin. So the answer is complicated. I don't think we have great data on that.
No, but it's something to be aware of, isn't it? Sorry, Michael, I'll cut across you.
No, I was just thinking this raises two questions, because one, you buy your property and you use the Bitcoin blockchain. You're buying the house with Bitcoin. So you're creating a ledger and a history of what's been bought. But unless everybody around the world does it, it's it's a not complete ledger.
Well, no, you only need the two parties involved, don't you, Ragnar? You don't necessarily need every single person in the entire world to agree, we must use the Bitcoin and the blockchain now. It only needs the two parties involved in the transaction to agree to use that.
I was thinking about going to see who owns property, things like, actually keeping a record of what properties, using the blockchain for property, really. But then it also raises the question of, is it not like kind of buying a property on the stock market? So you agree that it's going to cost X amount of Bitcoins today. Tomorrow, something happens and Bitcoin value's gone down. Suddenly your property isn't worth as much because of the change in the value of the Bitcoin.
Ragnar, you got anything on that?
So what's the question about? Because you're talking about the fluctuation in the currency value and then the recording of the property transfer.
Yeah, well, the second question was more the interesting one, is that if you're buying a property with Bitcoin, you changes overnight. How would that work?
Sorry, Michael, we're losing you there, mate. Your Wi-Fi's gone a bit.
I know I'm on a dodgy signal here. I'm concerned, with the value of the Bitcoin changing constantly. What you agree to, however many Bitcoins to buy a property. What happens when that value changes during the process of buying and selling the house?
Well, you can lock in a Bitcoin value. There's different exchanges and companies that can do that. You're not going to have a 30-day escrow with Bitcoin sitting in an escrow for 30 days. What you'll do is ahead of time decide on the price in your local currency, dollars or pounds. And then when you go to send that Bitcoins over, you'll check the conversion rate. And then that's it. It just takes, 30 seconds to send it. And then however long you want to wait for confirmations. And then you can keep your value in Bitcoins or trade it into another currency.
Yeah, so I suppose all the more reasons to do it quicker. not hold on.
But I think an easy way to understand this is think about someone in China buying property in the United States and why they would want to use Bitcoin. Well, number one, they have currency control. So they can send out $50,000 per person per year. So by using Bitcoin, it gives them another avenue besides banks to do that, number one. Number two, it's cheaper, it's faster. Another point is they don't need permission to do it. So that's one way to understand it.
So for me, money laundering, I mean, that's a big thing here in the UK. You know all the checks that have to be done for money laundering. How would you? I suppose you have to qualify the person just as normal through the normal money laundering checks, and it's just a different currency.
But arguably, I mean, I suppose, Michael, what we're doing is we're looking at it today, which arguably, if they've got, I mean, in a sense, Bitcoin is digital cash. So it's effectively like me giving you a £5 in person, £5 in person, or exactly. So I suppose looking at it today, we could be with a very skeptical head say, look, I've just got 10 grand through the proceeds of crime, and actually I want to convert it into Bitcoin and give it to somebody else. Therefore, it is suddenly, you're right, absolutely. So
you might not have got that 10 pounds in cash. You might have got that 10 pounds in Bitcoins through some other method. Then try and convert that back into real currency by buying a house.
But remember the fact that, again, we're looking at this today. If moving this forward, obviously, if there is a digital record of all those sort of transactions, you will probably know where that money's come from.
The beauty about the Bitcoin, though, is it can be anonymous.
Well, remember, when you're buying real estate, you are going to record the owner of it, whether you use cash, Bitcoin, gold, anything else. Once that property is yours, it's your name on it, your address. So, that's not a problem.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to have to say apologies for this week because I'm actually working remotely, not in my normal place. So I'm actually going to have to cut this quite short because I'm going to get thrown out of this serviced office very soon. So it's a real shame. I love some of the spam we've just got in our comments messages, by the way. I think it's brilliant. I can't even repeat some of it. But anyway, look, Ragnar, look, thanks ever so much for joining us. And this, I think, if nothing else, it almost sort of prompts more questions than it does answers. I don't think there's necessarily a sort of a straight answer for any of this. I'm sure there's a lot of debate, and certainly I can't claim to be an expert in this at all, but I'm certainly keen to explore the options more and actually have some more answers to this. Michael, come on, get yourself a Bitcoin wallet, right? So I can give you a little tip, right? Through the Bitcoin, and I can feel really advanced. But Ragnar, I genuinely, I hope this is sort of one of the first of many discussions on this, because I think, if nothing else, we have to have this discussion, sort of misadventure, to sort of work out the mistakes as well as the positives, because I think there are so many different questions and awareness that we've got to sort of promote, really. And I think that's probably why you're doing what you're doing with the International Bitcoin Real Estate Association. So just how can people find out more about that, by the way, just in case, obviously, on the replay, that we can help you out with this? Sure.
So our website is ibtcrea.org.
Okay, fine. And what I'll do is I'll put a link to that in the article that I'm writing about this as well, so people can sort of see and click through that. And you've got a big LinkedIn group as well, so I think people can find you on there. Is that right?
Yeah, just go to LinkedIn and then International Bitcoin Real Estate Association. And let's definitely do some more of these. This is fun.
Yeah, more than welcome to. All right, so look, I'm just going to pause the recording on this now. Michael, thanks for your time, mate. And no doubt we'll speak to you soon. So I'm just going to pause. Don't you guys go away, so.